Welcome back to the ThingRex Audio Experience, everyone. We've been digging into the basics of IoT, but today we're really going to amp things up. We're talking AI and how it's transforming IoT on the AWS platform.
Definitely exciting stuff.
We've got some great ThingRex articles to guide us, and I've got to say, I'm really curious to see where this deep dive takes us.
It's a powerful combination, no doubt. And the beauty is, you don't need to be a coding guru to tap into this. We're going to be talking about real-world ways businesses, even those just beginning their IoT journey, can really leverage AI on AWS.
Absolutely. And, one article that really caught my eye was all about this new tool, Amazon Q, for command line. The author really goes out on a limb, calling it a game changer for AWS IoT development.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, what does that really mean for someone like, a business leader who's more focused on the big picture?
Well, you can think about it this way. Imagine an expert who's fluent in both tech and e-business. That's Q. It means you don't necessarily need a massive team of developers to launch your IoT project on AWS. Q can bridge the gap, turning your business needs into a working IoT solution.
Okay. So that's a pretty strong argument for Q. But the author also mentions running into some, quirks along the way. Sounds like he's still learning the rope, huh?
Of course, every new technology has its hiccups. AI is no exception. But what's cool is how the author tackled these challenges. It's almost like a getting to know you phase with the new tool. For instance, Q tried to hard code some values instead of using an existing config file. A little nudge to use the config file, and Q learned from it.
Oh, so it learns.
It highlights the way AI development works, always evolving.
So it's a back and forth. Both the user and the AI are learning. That makes sense. Now, one of the quirks that caught my attention was this throttling exception. Sounds technical, but basically Q hit a speed bump and needed a little push to get going. The author mentioned that the free trial has limitations, and eventually you need to upgrade to Pro tier. Is this something businesses should worry about?
Well, it's definitely something to think about. If you're really depending on Q for development, that Pro tier upgrade might be worth it, especially considering the potential time savings and efficiency gains. But if you're just testing the waters with AI-powered IoT, the free tier might be a good place to start. Experiment. See how Q fits into your workflow.
Got it. A classic cost-benefit analysis then. Weigh the features against your needs and budget. All right, let's shift gears a bit. Another ThingRex article delves into the different ways to manage your AWS IoT infrastructure, focusing on CLI, CDK, and SDK. I gotta admit, those acronyms could be a bit intimidating for someone who's not a techie. Can you break it down for us?
Sure, let's say you're building a house. The CLI is like having basic tools, a hammer, saw, nails. You can build a simple structure, but it's a lot of manual work.
Okay, so CLI, the do-it-yourself approach. What about CDK?
CDK is more like a prefab house kit.
Okay.
It has all the parts you need, instructions for assembly, faster and easier than just basic tools, but you're limited to the kit's design.
More structure, less flexibility.
Yeah.
And lastly, SDK.
SDK is like hiring a team of expert builders.
Right.
They can build a custom house just for you, based on your exact specifications. Most flexible, but requires more expertise to manage.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
So for our listener, this means you can pick the level of control and customization you want. Want things set up quick and easy? CDK might be the way to go. Need something super specific? SDK gives you the power. The article uses the example of creating an IoT thing using each of these methods.
Right, and it's interesting how the author emphasizes the concept of state management, especially as you scale up to many devices.
Yeah. The section about cleaning up those created IoT things really jumped out at me. It's like, you can't just build all these virtual houses and forget about them. Got to keep track, make sure everything is organized.
Exactly. State management is essential in IoT. As the number of devices grows, things can get very complicated very fast. It's about maintaining control and order as your IoT ecosystem expands.
And I think that's the aha moment for many businesses. They realize scalability isn't just about adding more devices, it's about managing them well.
Right.
Now, speaking of managing resources, the author of another article asks a really interesting question. Which resources should be managed by CDK?
Now that gets into some strategic thinking.
Right. So what's the author's take on this?
They recommend managing static resources through CDK.
Okay.
Things like policies, roles, and rules. These are the things that don't change too often. For dynamic resources like certificates, things, and thing group assignments, the author suggests using SDK.
All right, so finding the balance between automation and flexibility. Static elements are set with CDK, while dynamic ones get a more hands-on approach.
Yes.
But what does this actually look like for a business?
Think of it like this. CDK lays the groundwork, the foundation for your IoT solution. It's like setting up the infrastructure for a factory, the assembly lines, the power grid. But the things you actually produce in that factory, those are your dynamic elements, managed with SDK or templates.
That's a really clear analogy. So even if a business is using CDK for that initial structure, they still need to understand how SDK fit into the picture.
Absolutely. And that's where the author's preference for a hybrid approach really makes sense. CDK is great for setting up the core of your IoT solution, but it does have limits. The article mentions cloud formation constraints.
Right. Cloud formation constraints. Can you remind us what that refers to?
Cloud formation is essentially the framework that CDK uses to work with AWS. And like any framework, it has its boundaries, rules you have to stick to. These are the cloud formation constraints, and they can sometimes restrict what you can do with CDK alone.
So that's where SDK provide that extra flexibility to get around those constraints.
Exactly. SDK gives you that fine-grained control to adjust and customize specific parts of your IoT solution, while provisioning templates let you automate the creation and configuration of resources. It's about using the right tool for the right job.
Sounds like a lot to manage. How does a business decide which approach is right for them? Is there a simple rule of thumb?
Well, there's no one-size-fits-all solution, unfortunately. The best approach really depends on the specific needs of your business, how complex your IoT solution is, and the level of expertise you have in-house.
That makes sense. Assessing your resources, understanding the trade-offs. Now, we've been diving deep into the technical side, but let's bring it back to the business perspective. What are some key takeaways for our listeners who are thinking about using AI in their IoT deployments on AWS?
One of the most important things to remember is that AI isn't just about automating tasks. It's also about gaining insights, making predictions, and optimizing processes.
How does that translate to real benefits for businesses?
Well, imagine being able to put sophisticated AI algorithms right onto your IoT devices. This means they can make intelligent decisions independently without constantly talking to the cloud.
So devices that can think for themselves. What are the implications for businesses?
The possibilities are pretty much endless.
Wow.
Think about self-driving cars, smart factories, even personalized healthcare solutions. Edge AI opens up a whole new level of intelligence and responsiveness for IoT applications.
It sounds like we're on the verge of a major shift in how we design and implement IoT solutions. And this fusion of AI and edge computing seems to be at the core of it.
Definitely.
It is. It's mind-blowing to think about the potential, but honestly, it's a little intimidating too. For businesses that are just starting to explore AI in their IoT strategies,
Yeah.
where do they even begin?
That's a really good question, and it can feel overwhelming, for sure. But I think the key is to start with a crystal clear understanding of your business goals. What are the specific problems you're trying to tackle? What kind of data do you need to be collecting? Once you've got that clarity, then you can start exploring the AI tools and techniques that are going to be the best fit for what you need.
So it's not about just jumping on the AI bandwagon because it's the latest and greatest thing. It's about aligning AI strategically with your overall business objectives.
Exactly. And, sometimes that might mean starting small. Experiment with different approaches and gradually scale up as you gain more experience and confidence.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, from Amazon Q to Edge AI and the strategic implications of it all. But I think, as we've discovered, this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
AI and IoT are converging in ways that have the power to completely transform industries
Right.
and redefine the limits of what's possible.
Absolutely.
It's such an exciting time to be involved in this space.
It is. That's what makes the ThingRex audio experience so engaging. We're all learning together, uncovering the possibilities of IoT and figuring out how it's going to shape the future.
Absolutely. So until next time, keep innovating, keep experimenting, and keep pushing those boundaries of what's possible with IoT.
And we'll be back soon with another deep dive into the world of IoT right here on the ThingRex audio experience.
Don't forget, all the insights from this episode come from a bunch of articles on ThingRex.com. Go check them out if you want to take your IoT knowledge to the next level.